What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Mile High Hoops podcast. As always, I am your host, Zach By, and as always, I appreciate you spending a sliver of your busy day with me here on the podcast, reacting to one of the more embarrassing Nugget losses of the entire NBA season. For me, there's no two ways to slice it. The 124-111 loss in Utah on Wednesday night on national television. This one sticks out. This one sticks out for all the wrong reasons. For me, the final score was not truly indicative of how one-sided of a basketball game this truly was. This was a game that, for me, and we'll get into some of the specifics here in a second, but was decided in the first half in Salt Lake City on Wednesday night. This was a game that, you knew how well Utah was playing coming in, right? And you know that Michael Malone emphasized this stuff, okay? And Utah was coming off really a stretch where they were 8-2 over the 10 previous games headed into Wednesday night, and it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill 8-2, okay? This was an 8-2 where the Jazz dominated Philly, won by double figures. This was a Jazz team that went to Milwaukee and not only put it on Milwaukee to an embarrassing degree, but guys, at one point in their win over Milwaukee in the previous game, ahead of Wednesday night, the Jazz were up by 33 points in Milwaukee. That's almost unheard of, okay? And they won that game 132-116. They beat the Sixers 120 to 109. And again, a team that is just rolling. And if you just check out the NBA standings, they're not going to stick out because even after the Nuggets win on Wednesday, they're still under 500. And believe it or not, and this is a credit to Denver here, that was the first loss of the season where Denver fell to a team that was below 500. Literally the first time. It took until January 10th, right? So that's impressive. Best mark in the league against losing teams. And if you remember, if you've been following the team for a legitimate duration of time, that was an issue for these Nuggets for years, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then they started to turn that corner in the title run season. And even the season before, I think. Well, no, actually, I'm not sure on that one. But certainly the title season and now this season, they have handled their business against losing teams, and they ended up getting handled on ESPN on Wednesday night. Let's just talk about the game really briefly. I'm not going to spend too much time on the game, and I'll tell you why. Is that Denver just wasn't ready to play, lacked energy, lacked focus, and they looked in general like they didn't want to be there, which is confusing because they weren't on some back-to-back. That wasn't the case. Salt Lake City is not far from Denver, Colorado. It's one of the shortest, if not the shortest, trip for the Nuggets all season. Okay, they last played on Sunday. They had 2 full days off. So the approach, when you add up those factors, you were a rested team. You were on national television, okay, which is a little bit different, right? And in addition to those two things, you knew how well Utah was playing coming in. And to come out with no energy and to be so flat and to look tired, they looked like they were playing 3 nights in a row. That wasn't close to the case. So I don't really want to hear tired as an excuse. So it's one of these things where it was just disappointing. There's no other way to slice it. They were lackluster from an energy standpoint, and Mike Malone talked about it after the game, and especially the stretch of games they have coming up, and we'll talk about that here in a second. It's like, dude, and we talked about this at the start of the season. You are the hunted You are the NBA champion. Utah gets to play on national TV against the NBA champions. Do you think they're going to be up for that game? Do you think there was tickets available an hour before tip-off? I can tell you that no. So it was disappointing, and I hope they learn a lesson from that, because we're going to come on here and react into more games like this if that's the approach here moving forward. The game itself, just a couple notes, 124-111. Game was never that close. The house of horrors that is Utah, it's remarkable. This team gets beat in Utah like the sun rises. The Nuggets have now lost 15 of their last 16 true road games in Utah. Guys, this goes back to Michael Malone's first season with the Denver Nuggets, right? So, and the only win in Utah during that stretch is that famous, Magnificent Seven game in 2020, where, you remember that they had 7 guys. It was the COVID season, and or was it the COVID? I forget. It's 4 years ago, and I forget the exact, off the top of my head, the exact reasoning. But I think it was COVID. But anyway, you remember the picture on the plane, and there's just 7 dudes. It's like Vlatko and Jamal and Yoke, and really, really fun night. That's the only win going back to the 2014-15 season. That's incredible. That was Jokic's only win against the Jazz in Utah. You wouldn't think that that's the case, and it's not like Utah is. It's not one of these places like we warn you about going to Atlanta, going to Los Angeles, and the entrappings for young millionaires, right? That's not the case in Salt Lake. So I can't really explain it. The long-standing failures stacked up over the years in Utah. Couple notes here from the first half. I stopped taking notes in the second half. Fast break points, 16-2 at halftime. Advantage Utah. They scored 71 points in one half of basketball. They shot 62% from the floor. Of the 26 baskets in the first half, 21 of them came off assists. All right, they shot 50% from 3 in that first half. All right, and they cooled a bit in that second half, which makes the final score a little bit more deceiving. But just a disappointing first 2 quarters, just the whole game, really. But the game was decided in those first 2 quarters, in my opinion. The Utah bench outscored Denver 53-38. Jordan Clarkson, man, if that was a debut for Calvin Booth, or not a debut, but a showcase for general manager Calvin Booth, man, I thought Jordan Clarkson was fantastic, particularly in that first half. 16 points in that first half, 7 assists in that first half. In the second quarter alone, that man, Jordan Clarkson, scored or assisted on 11 of Utah's 13 second quarter buckets. I mean, he was brilliant. And Clarkson, and I actually, I wish I had the phrase back that I used on the radio show on Wednesday, looking forward to the game, talking on the drive with Philip Lindsay, 2 to 6 on the Fan weekdays. I said, hey, Jordan Clarkson is a professional scorer. And that's different, from like say like a Kobe Bryant, who's going to, be on an all-defensive team while leading the game, leading the league in scoring or something like that. Just a one-track minded scorer, Jordan Clarkson. And that's not really who Jordan Clarkson was on Wednesday night. Now, I think that's who he's traditionally been. I think big picture, that's the long-standing scouting report from Jordan Clarkson. But I thought he impacted the game in so many ways, was so manipulative off the dribble and finding guys and, keeping that ball moving and not being so sticky with it. So I was so impressed with Jordan Clarkson. I would be over the moon if the 31-year-old guard found a way to Denver. And I mentioned that. We talked about it in previous episodes. He was in odds. The Nuggets were the odds-on favorite in some offshore gambling sites for Jordan Clarkson's next destination as he's in his final year in Utah. So, imagine Jordan Clarkson in those non-Jokic minutes. Again, I don't know what they'd have to give up. And once we get close to their deadline, we'll talk more concrete about what some packages will look like. But He was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. And the Nuggets were not. Jokic, I thought, played solid. Outside of him, I can't really point to anyone that played well. Jokic scored 27 points on 8 of 9 shooting. I bet his over 24.5 points. And the logic there was in the previous game, he had only taken 3 shots, right? And I'm like, we've seen this before. We talked on Tuesday's podcast about that performance and kind of tried to diagnose, trying to go psychiatrist and diagnose why Jokic does what he does sometimes. But I went back and looked at the 4 previous instances where Jokic, and there has been 4 this season, where he's taken single-digit shots. And I noticed the next game, the game following taking single-digit shots, and I still have it here in my notes, he has scored 30, 26, 31, and 34. So averaging 31 points a game following a game where he takes single-digit shots. He got there. He gets to 27 points. But guess what? He actually still took single-digit shots. And I believe that's the first time this year where it's happened in back-to-back games. This one was just felt and looked different than the others. I'm not clumping it in with the others. But outside of Jokic, no one really stuck out to me in any meaningful way. It was just a dud of a game. It was just a flat-out dud of a game. All right, you might be able to tell I'm trying to keep my voice low. It's one of these times of the year again. I am battling something. Not sick enough to not be here, but not 100% either. Let's look ahead to the schedule, all right, as we finish up here. This next group of games, man, it's real. It's real. And the world's going to be watching, all right? Here's what I mean. You came off that loss on ESPN. Friday night, the Nuggets are hosting the Pelicans. The Pelicans are playing fantastic, okay? The Pelicans, right before the Nuggets got on the main stage, the Pelicans absolutely demoralized the Golden State Warriors to a degree that is like Steve Kerr sounded broken in the press conference. Google that if you haven't seen it. But this Pelicans group has won 6 out of 7 games. They are playing fantastic. They won that game against the Warriors in the Bay Area, 141-35. In the previous game at Sacramento, 133-100. I mean, think about the numbers here. You're talking about winning back-to-back basketball games on the road by, 70 points if you combine the winning margin for both of them? Incredible. I mean, truly. So you better get your you-know-what together, or you're going to get embarrassed on your home floor on Friday night if the Nuggets have that same approach as they did on Wednesday night. Real quick, we'll do a snapshot look ahead. Beyond Friday, hosting New Orleans, it's a matinee on Sunday at 1:30 in the afternoon at home. And then they'll turn around and play Tuesday in Philadelphia on TNT. It's going to be Embiid. It's going to be Jokic. The world is going to be watching that game. All right. And then they're going to turn right around on Friday and play in Boston against the league's best team probably right now, the Boston Celtics, on ESPN. All right. So it's a tough sledding here, truly. 3 of the next 4 on national TV, all against really good teams. I mean, even the Pacers, 7 games above 500. So it's not going to be easy here. And we'll see. We'll see what the Nuggets' interest level is. Again, and I want to finish with this. What happened on Wednesday night has no bearing on how I think of the team, big picture. It really doesn't. I've just been doing this too long to overreact to a game in early January. But these next set of games will tell me the interest level of this basketball team in the middle of the season. All right, it's going to tell me a lot of how bad these guys want to be here. The year after winning a championship. So, all right, we're going to leave it there for now, guys. I hope that you are doing great. Thank you for being here. Please, if you're watching us on YouTube in particular, if you're not, no worries. Appreciate you being here. But if you are watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, and put the notifications on so you never miss a video. Okay, we'll leave it there for now, guys, and we'll be back on Tuesday reacting to the game on Friday night against New Orleans, and then Sunday's matinee and then preview the 76ers game that the world will be watching on TNT. And whatever happens over the weekend, we'll be back here talking about it right here on the Mile High Hoops podcast.